Welcome to Grow For It. It's a podcast for small business owners, managers, and professionals. The goal is to give me a chance to work with the space between your ears, on your mindset, to help you focus on the things that really matter to your success. I want to enable you to concentrate on pursuing your vision, setting meaningful goals, and engaging in the day-to-day activities that will have the biggest impact. Thanks for joining me. Friends, welcome back to this episode of Grow For It. I've got a great guest in the office today. This is Cathy Fyock, and she's a book coach. She helps professionals and thought leaders actually establish and grow their business through drafting and writing the creation of books. Cathy, welcome.
Thank you so much.
This is so cool. I mean, you and I met through a referral, obviously. We've got some common friends out there.
Yes.
And you just returned to Florida. So again, thanks for bringing the great weather. I really appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I've got to figure this out. I talk so much about content creation and the need to really do it, whether that's a blog, a video, a podcast like this, different things for my professional clients. But this is a different, unique area, and this is book writing. So let's talk about that for a little while. How did you get into this?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was working as a consultant, and I had become an author because I knew that I needed to differentiate myself from the rest of the pack. So I had really grown my business through authorship. Fast forward, I was out of my own business and working for another consulting group, unhappy. But I get a call sort of out of the blue from my chapter of the National Speakers Association. The president said, "Cathy, I heard a rumor that you wrote one of your books in less than 6 weeks. Is that right?" And I said, "Well, actually, I wrote 4 of my 5 books in less than 6 weeks at the time." I know. And he said, "That is awesome." And these were the magic words: "Do you have a process?" And I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, oh, yes, I do have a process. And he said, "Would you be willing to give a program about your process?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to." He said, "But before you say yes, we have 2 of our chapter members who are working on their books. Would you be willing to coach them using your process and then give a report?" And I said, "Well, you had me give a program."
Bingo. Type A over there.
Yeah. So I start working with these 2 women who are friends of mine, and almost immediately, one of them said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a book coach?" And I said, "No."
It really wasn't on the radar.
What is a book coach? Is there a need? And they said, "Oh, yeah, there is definitely a need. There are a lot of people who know they want to write a book, they need to write a book, but they don't know how to get started. They don't know how to get it across the finish line." And I thought, well, that's really interesting. So fast forward, I gave my program, and I've been a member of my chapter of National Speakers Association for more than 30 years. And my friends came up to me and said, "Cathy, have you ever thought about becoming a book coach?"
It's amazing. I mean, I've seen videos of you from your website talking to other presentations and not really talking about books. You're a really good speaker. You're an in-demand speaker.
Well, thank you.
No, absolutely. I love watching people do their craft, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's fun. And when you do some speaking, it's, wow, okay, I like how you did that. Or, I mean, you really do well on stage. You own the room when you step up there. And then to see that translate into this, where a lot of your clients are also speakers, a lot of your clients, also authors and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about who is your target market.
Well, I do have a lot of speakers, but a lot of consultants, coaches, thought leaders, professionals, solopreneurs, folks like wealth advisors, realtors, CPAs, attorneys, anybody who uses their expertise as a strategy to serve their client. Then codifying that expertise in the form of a book is a fabulous way to educate, inspire, and ultimately sell your client base.
No, it's a great way to, I mean, it's almost like instant authority when you have that on your website or you have it on your social media. Hey, I just published a book, or somebody introduced you as a published author. It just rings differently. Even in today where we're reading blogs and all these other things, so posts, but a book is a book, and there's a lot that goes into that.
A book is magic.
It's amazing. I've seen a lot of people try to do that, but it hasn't always come out properly. It hasn't, it's been, well, yeah, I've started that thing. I've been writing that book for 5 years, and here you are with 4 of them in 6 weeks or whatever that number was.
Yeah.
You're the gold medalist Olympian of book writing. No, that's fantastic. And it, like you said, it's a great way to promote your expertise, because I may not want to engage with you directly. I may still be doing some due diligence, but I can look at that book. I can get an idea and some insights into how you speak or how you approach or how you think about an issue that might align with my concerns, my fears, my needs, and that makes for a really good match when you're out trying to promote your services, your products, your knowledge, right?
Absolutely. Plus, you have the benefit of having your voice heard by your client and developing a trust relationship, and that is huge.
Everything comes down to trust, but also authenticity. That's what I
Yes.
really. I mean, there's a lot of people that use ghostwriters, but I think there's a difference when it's actually
is.
you sitting down to write.
I'm a huge fan of writing your own book. Ghostwriters, yes, they're out there. They can get it written for you, but there is something magical too about the process of writing that gives you clarity and insight about your topic that nothing else will.
Well, and that's the thing. I'd like to really kind of talk a little bit about that process without giving away the secret sauce, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'd like to talk about that. But what I found interesting is was we were preparing for this. You said you're not really a writer. You don't really like writing, and yet you're really good at it. So tell me, where does that come
Yeah,
into
it's
play?
very interesting. I like to tell folks at the beginning of any writing workshop or program, I do not like to write. And usually that shocks people because they think because I'm a book coach and an author. But here's the thing, I think writing is really hard work. And I think that's what makes me a good book coach, is because most of my clients don't love to write. In fact, they would rather be speaking or training or doing their thing.
It's a lot more fun.
Yeah. And so they don't want to write. People who love to write, and they go ahead and write their books. But people who need a book coach probably don't like to write or don't know how to get it all together, or need the accountability, or need some other support that I can provide.
Well, it's so funny. You watch on the movies, and it's a movie about a young author. So they go out to the lake cabin. They've got 3 or 4 months with nothing else. Evidently, there's enough money in the bank account that they can do this, and no other worries in life. So they're going to sit down by the lake on the deck every morning and just type out their book. That's not reality for most of us.
No.
So I would think there's going to be a lot of challenge. By the way, you're not a writer, and yet you just published another book, which, by the way, you brought me a copy. Thank you. It's called Authority. Talk to me about that real quick.
Well, authority is all about the power of authorship, of being an author. I tell my story of how I reinvented myself as a book coach by writing a book. Because I really, other than being an author, I had no credential as a book coach. But by writing a book about how to write a book, I established that credential, that authority, and was able to step into this new role. So that's what I talk about in my chapter in this anthology.
So this is a collection of stories, a collection of stories and perspectives from various authors?
Yes, from 15 different thought leaders in this space.
And this is already a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller.
I
Available all
know,
over
I
the
know,
place.
very exciting, very exciting.
So it's called It's Time to Discover Authority, but authority is really strategic concepts from 15 international thought leaders to create influence, credibility, and a competitive edge for you and your business. I look forward to this. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very
you're
much.
very welcome.
No, that's exciting. So, we talked about obviously that opportunity of just going out to the lake house for 3 months and just writing and writing and writing. It's not really reality. There's probably some key challenges that a lot of people tend to have to come to terms with. You want to walk us through some of those?
Absolutely. I've found that there are 3 basic challenges. The first is focus. What do I write about? How do I get it focused? Developing a strategic plan for your book that aligns with your business strategy. Because most of my authors want to write a book, not just to write a book, to say they've checked that off their bucket list,
Right.
but because they want to grow their business. So that has to be done strategically. So having the strategic pieces in place to do that. The other biggie is time. How do you find the time? Most of my authors are busy professionals who are busy serving their clients. So how do you find the time? How do you make the time?
You got to carve it out.
You have to carve it out.
Yeah.
And then surprisingly, I think the other big, huge obstacle, and what's funny, this is a huge obstacle because I think it's funny because most of my clients are really successful, brilliant folks, and yet they are faced with that negative voice inside their head that says, "Who do you think you are to write this book? What makes you think you can do this book? What makes you think you're the expert? Why shouldn't somebody else be writing this book?" And that's a lot of times what I am hired for, is to become that cheerleader for the author.
That is such a huge issue right there alone. Besides the time and everything else, the
Yes.
focus, all that. But that negative self-talk, that imposter syndrome is what a lot of people refer to it
Yep.
as, where, well, you can't possibly understand that. Why would anybody want to read your stuff? And you talk yourself out of something the rest of the market has been waiting for, because you are the only one who can really write this. This is
so
you,
true.
right?
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that stuff. I love that stuff. And I mean, trying to overcome that. There are some tools for that. There's some techniques for that, but it's always there. And I think, unfortunately, it puts a lot of people back up in their safe zone. I don't want to step out of the box. I'm going to stay right here where it's comfy, and they never actually see what could have been. And that's so unfortunate for a lot of people. So fast forward in that process, let's assume I've sat down and I've taken some time and I finally got the manuscript written. I finally got it done, and it really feels like an A paper, right? I mean, it's huge. And it's the best thing that anybody's ever going to read, right?
Yes, right.
But now what? I mean, you're not a publisher per se. You're not in that
No.
side of the game, but you can actually help.
I can. And I'm not an editor, not in the sense of being a copy editor or line editor, although I am, what I've discovered, is a developmental editor. In other words, I help determine, are there missing pieces? Does it all fit together? Does it flow? Does it all make sense? Does it all lead that reader to engaging with the author in the way they want? So that's really critical. But I'm not a publisher, but I do have great relationships with publishing partners, and I can make a recommendation for my author to the right publishing partner, because not all publishers are created equal, and they don't always offer the same services or are the right fit. So I help them make that really important decision.
Well, and that's the problem. People don't realize that publishing houses sometimes have a certain niche that they're really, really good at, and they understand that landscape. And if they just take you on just for the sake of, well, okay, yeah, we've got some room here, they may not be able to adequately execute for you as an author, because it's really not their space.
Exactly. But even beyond that, there are different models for publishers, and it's important that my authors, as thought leaders and business professionals, be able to buy their books at cost. That they have total creative control, that they own the copyright, that they own future rights. There's a lot of fine print that you need to understand if you're signing with a publisher, what rights you're giving away and what rights you're assigning. So that's something I help my authors
And
do.
that's all of that's, I guess, somewhat intellectual property, but at the same time, this is the business of writing a book, and that's the other side. The creativity part is what most people think about, or hey, yeah, I'm going to sit down and write this wonderful thing. But there's the business aspect of it.
Absolutely,
and you can
yes.
get upside down before you know it. You hear about that in the record industry, right? Hey, this group, should have done this, but the record company kept all the money, and they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah, so I would think that's kind of congruent in your
Yes.
world.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And I'm all about having my authors have the book really serve them in their business. So for my speakers, that's being able to get books at cost, or being able to make a deal with their speaking for a big conference. For example, one of my clients was speaking for an employer, and the CEO said, "Yeah, I want to get a book for all of my employees." And she said, "Oh, well, how many employees are there?" $1,700. Oh my gosh. Well, she was able to give them a really deep discount, was able to even ask the question, would it make sense for us to create a special edition of the book with a foreword from you, Mr. CEO,
wow. Wow.
and have your company's logo on the book, and it be this very special product for your employees? She was able to make a really nice payday that day because of not only the speaking engagement fee, but her book sales.
No, that's fantastic. And that's a market right there that says, no, we don't want to just buy one. We want, like you said, was it 1,700, 17,000?
Yeah, 1,700. So
Overnight,
figuring out
one
how to
transaction.
sell. Yeah.
Yeah.
So selling not just one book at a time, but selling thousands of books
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah.
And
Not a
helping
bad
my
gig.
authors learn how to do that. Yeah.
Not a bad gig. So you really coach both sides. I mean, the whole spectrum of what we're doing.
Yes.
What I love is how you actually do this, and you've got a number of different resources. When I went online, and I got your name, and we kind of connected here, and we talked a little bit. But I went out and looked at, okay, who is this Cathy Fyock, right? By the way, Fyock, right? Fyock.
Yes,
Okay. So who is Cathy Fyock? And you've got a lot of information. Talk to us about your service offerings. Talk to us about what you have available for somebody that says, I've either been thinking about that forever and I've wanted to do it. I
Yes.
just didn't know where to start. Or I don't know if I'm the right person. Maybe I am. I'd like to explore it.
Well, first of all, I love to talk with anyone who's just even thinking about this idea. Sometimes I talk with folks and they say, I know it's probably too early in the process, but that's okay. That's okay. I can help you move to the next step. So I'm happy to have a conversation, no obligation. But I have coaching services. That's my number one primo service, and that's a one-on-one 6-month process that takes you through the strategy planning to the weekly accountability calls to getting connected with a group to focusing on what you're going to do once the book is published. So it's a very complete program. But in addition to that, I also do workshops, retreats, I have master classes, all sorts of different products and services. I've developed 2 online courses now
Right.
that are available. So
And
lots
you give a
different.
taste of those on your website. You can go out there and kind of look,
Yes.
and YouTube and things like that. You can kind of see some of these ideas, some of these things in play, so you get a good feel for, wow, okay, that's what it would be like. And I think you also share the fact that, as you said at the outset, this isn't going to be a particularly easy process.
No.
It's going to be an exciting process, and it's going to be worth it when you're done, but it's going to take some work. And I think you kind of walk people through that. But you mentioned accountability. I think that's awesome because, again, when it becomes a little bit of okay, there's a speed bump or I'm starting to get distracted or, hey, I'll come back to it. You've got that accountability. And I think for a lot of us, that does help people kind of get through whatever goal or objective they're trying to accomplish because they know they've got somebody there that's going to ask them, that you're going to call, you're going to have this webinar or whatever, to where you got to sit back and go, yeah, I probably could have done better on that. How do you handle those? I mean, that's got to be a common issue, right?
Right. A lot of times when clients say, oh, I think I need to postpone our meeting because I haven't done any work. And like, no. That's when we most need to meet is when you haven't done any work. We need to problem solve and figure out what got in the way. Was it that you didn't book time on your calendar to write? Maybe you put it on your to-do list, which is not what you should be doing. You should put it on your calendar. So we talk through all of the different strategies and issues that have gotten in their way, and we figure out how to not make that happen again.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you cover a broad range of authors, but these are generally people that still, the process, I guess, is somewhat uniform. Again, let's walk the journey. Let's walk the path. So it doesn't matter. You may be a healthcare specialist. You, again, may be a realtor. You may be a financial person.
Exactly.
You may be a business leader. You may be, it could be a lot of different things. The process, those steps, though, that's a uniform thing that everybody has to deal with. That's a common path, and you get to be that Sherpa. You're going to drive. You're going to take us to the mountaintop and beyond, right?
Absolutely.
No, that is awesome.
Yeah. And many times it's by helping you even conceive your book as a blog to book. One of my books is blog to book. Repurposing content to discover the book you've already written.
Right. That's interesting because a lot of us are publishing blogs on a fairly regular basis. I used to blog all the time, and I still do for other clients. And sometimes my stuff is lacking because I'm writing for other people. But yeah, you can in some ways actually. There's the words are already on the paper. You just have to assemble them in the right way. And again, you add some perspective and some direction in terms of how to really do that.
Yeah, one of my clients had been blogging for some time, and we sat down for our strategy session, and I said, figure out where you've already written content, these content pieces. We put together the outline. I said, map the content from your blogs to this book outline, and she came back to me. Over 65% of the book was already written.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I talked about this with some other people in different podcasts, and it's the importance of finding that brand voice. A lot of your clients are also speakers, so they probably kind of have that perspective. They kind of have that persona somewhat developed. Does that shift or get modified or get created through this process? What would you say? Because brand voice is everything. How do I want to present these ideas? Am I really technical? Am I kind of witty? Am I kind of insightful? All of that's important to how people perceive the product or service that you provide.
Absolutely. I think it's even more imperative if you're a speaker and you're going to be selling your book at the back of the room after the speech, then you want to be the same on the page as you are on the stage.
Authenticity.
Yeah, you want to have that same voice, because a lot of times people are buying your book because they want a souvenir of your talk. They want to take home a little piece of you. So you want it to be congruent, and you want it to be your authentic voice. So understanding what is your brand and articulating that throughout the book and having that come through in the personality on the page is really critical.
And that's one of the things I would think, that's one of the aspects of this whole process that you're really mindful of, because sometimes it's easy to kind of get off of the reservation, so to speak, or kind of off the path.
Yes. Oh, and some of my authors too, especially those who have masters or PhDs.
Really,
oh my
smart
gosh,
people.
they sometimes forget that they're not writing for an academic audience, or they're used to doing book reports and citations. And I said, this is different. We want to be more conversational. We want to talk like we're talking to a friend or a colleague. And so helping people overcome that, oh, my book should be this way, this mentality of thinking it has to be more academic or more something.
What are my colleagues going to say?
Yeah.
Big issue. Big issue. Well, they might buy a book, but they're not necessarily hiring you. So right for the audience, right for the broader. This is you to the world, right?
Right.
Now, do you ever get involved with people who have a book and they want to do a book on tape or an audible book? I mean, do you ever help with that at all, or is that part of the publishing process?
It's more of the publishing process, but I'm a big fan because so many folks now want to hear their books and not sit down and read them. So I'm a big fan of audiobooks and audio products.
Yeah, no, I'm a podcaster, so I mean,
course.
with that and producing podcasts for my clients and things like that, it's that's another medium out there, and you really kind of have to have it written before you can do that, I would think, and then kind of go through that, because people like to hear the vocal inflection, they like to hear the personality, which sometimes you can get on the written page or derive from the written page, but a lot of times it's this kind of medium is just a little bit more impactful depending on what your audience is. So I like this, just as long as you're not doing math on the radio, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Sometimes a book is good for that too as well.
One of my clients just told me that she's a nurse and she writes for nurses and about listening, and she got a call from one of her readers who had bought the audiobook, and the client, the reader said, "Oh my gosh, I loved hearing your voice. I felt like you were talking to me and you were speaking to me and you were telling me things I needed to hear." And my author said, "Wow, that made it all
could
worthwhile."
you imagine that call?
Yeah.
I mean, we're humans, right? We want that connection.
Yes,
We want
yes,
that. We want
yes.
that feedback, that biofeedback. Sometimes when you're writing, you don't know what are they going to think, and again, that negativity can creep in if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But a call like that just puts you over the moon, I would think.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's do this. Do you by chance have 3 tips or a few tips that you might be able to offer for someone who thinks, well, maybe I could do this and I'm not quite sure. Where would I begin? Take it away. What would you say?
I would say to begin with a strategic focus. So, number one is identify what you want your book to do for you and your business.
That's
So, do
interesting.
you want it?
Inwardly,
Yes. Do you
what's
want
the
it to drive new customers? Do
yeah,
you want it to
yeah.
educate your customers? What role will it play? What does it look like in your pipeline? And to have it really mapped out there. So that's super critical. The second thing is to identify your thesis statement, which is going back to English 101. And, we were always wondering why do we have to learn about thesis statements? And that's because, okay, we're going to use it now. And to really define what it is that your book is about. I give folks a magic button that says, ask me about my book. And I love that because when they wear it, they're actually having people come up to them and say, so tell me about your book. And then they're forced to talk about it. So that this articulating what the book is about, really critical. And then maybe the third tip is to being very, very clear on your targeted reader, which should be aligned with your targeted client. What does your client represent? What occupation are they in? What industry are they in? What age are they? Are they men? Are they women? Older, younger? And not only defining the demographic characteristics, but the psychographic characteristics.
So important.
So are they going through transition? Are they feeling a lot of angst, a lot of frustration? Are they confused? And speaking to that and understanding the psychological framework of your reader, I think is so critical. So those are some of the most important pieces, I think, in getting started, is being clear on the why, the who is it for, and the what is it about.
Well, and that's, you've obviously done a lot of public speaking, and you get this, you've learned this, you've been coached, or maybe it was intuitive. But the way I always learned it is you don't want to speak at your audience. You want to talk with them. You want to pull them in. You want to engage. You want people to feel like at some point you're literally speaking directly. Like the lady said with the nursing book, I thought you were talking to me, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you see that in church, right? I know the preacher will
Yeah,
say he was talking right to
he was
me.
looking at me, talking to me.
Good or bad, So, all of that's out there. But the more you can pull the audience in and realize, you've got a stated business purpose for this book, but you've got to connect. And you've got to understand, and when we're doing podcasts, when we're doing video, when we're doing blogging or website content, I always have to coach my clients. Think about the WIFM. What's in it for me? The WIFM.
bet.
And if you don't hit that, you're going to lose the audience from the outset, right?
Yes.
So understanding how to appeal to them emotionally, on the things, as you said, the psychodemographic, what is important to them in the moment, and how does that relate to your business? How do you provide that solution?
I do an exercise with my readers about the identifying the targeted reader, and it's an exercise that starts out, "Dear Reader," and basically just addressing the concerns, the thoughts, the fears of that reader, and it's a powerful exercise.
But once you are in that zone and you could connect with that, in sales we always call it the elevator speech, right?
Yes.
You get on the first floor, a CEO walks in, and he's getting off at the 5th floor, the 9th floor. You got 30 seconds.
Yes.
Hey, what do you do? Well, let me tell you. And how do
Yes.
you get that to go? But ask me about my book and what you were just saying. Yeah, how do you really make that connection point early and then reinforce it through the rest of the story? And how do you kind of bring them along? That stuff is fantastic. And you get to do this for a living.
I know.
How cool is that?
I know. I have the best job ever.
Well, second best. I have the best. But
No,
but,
no,
but I'm
no.
glad I'm glad to know that. So, no, that is fantastic. So Cathy, let me ask you this. If somebody's interested in starting this process or at least exploring it, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, probably the best way is just to send me an email at Cathy@cathyfyock.com and just say, I'd love to have a strategy session. I'd love to talk with you about a book, and we'll have a conversation.
That's fantastic. And you also have a website, right?
Absolutely, CathyFyock.com.
So simple.
So simple.
And again, that's CATHY, Fyock, FYOCK.
You got it.
.com. Perfect. Friends, I'll put all of that in the show notes for the episode. So if you're listening to this on my website, or if you're listening to this on iTunes, well Apple Podcasts now, you'll be able to go down in the show notes and you'll see all of her contact information. So don't feel like you had to write it down right now or go back. Feel free to listen to this many, many times, but the information will be there for you. Cathy, I can't tell you how much I really, really appreciate having you in the studio today. This has been fun.
This is super fun.
Awesome.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Absolutely great to meet you. Friends, a lot of what we talk about here really goes out to the business audience, ways to grow your business. Make sure you have the right mindset, right? Make sure you're focused on the things that really make an impact to your business. And it might be a book. It might be one of those tools that you need to really go to that, I hate to say it, that next level, but it's the truth. Sometimes that credibility, that authority level comes from, well, I'm a published author. I have written a book on that. And that matters because those first impressions can make or break the relationship. But Cathy, again, thank you so much. And friends, I hope you found this interesting. Hey, if you're new to this podcast and you've just found it, the one thing I'd ask you to do is just subscribe to the podcast. Now, if you're new to all this, when you subscribe to a podcast, you're not signing up to spend money. All you're doing is going out and hitting subscribe, which allows you to get a notification every time a new episode is published. That's all it is. It's called subscribing, but I'd encourage you to go out there and do that. We've got a lot of other episodes and many, many more to come. But if you like this approach, if you like these types of conversations, I have them all the time, and I'd be happy to welcome you into it. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Stitcher, really all over the place. So I hope wherever you are right now, I hope you're having a great day, hope you're staying healthy, and when you're ready to jump back in, let's grow for it.